Hey guys, this is Tech Howdy. I welcome you to another video tutorial where we are building this CMS application using ASP.NET Core and Angular 10. In the last video tutorial, we finished working on the profile.js file, and this file is now imported or referenced inside the index.cs HTML file. Now we can write our code inside the script block, and we have already referenced the file, so we can use the methods that we created inside profile.js file and consume them in this script block. So let's go ahead and start implementing the logic that we need when the page or the document is ready. So the first thing here we would want to do is go ahead and get the list of the countries. So we will call the get countries method, which we have created here in this profile.js file. So we will fetch all the countries calling the countries API. Once we get the list of the countries, we can use that list to populate the drop down that we are going to create for the user to select their country. So we need to populate this drop down with values, the names of the countries. Therefore, we need to get the list of countries. So first step, we get the list of countries. Then we need to initialize the date time picker. So we have a date time picker over here, and in jQuery UI we need to initialize this in order for us to have this date time ready to use in this particular form. So when we click on the date time, we will have a drop down created like for the calendar where we can select the date, and this will only be shown if we have initialized the date time picker. Therefore, when the document is ready, we will initialize the datetime picker. Next thing, we will get the username from the model object, and then we will pass that username to the parameters of our get user by username method, and this will return us a result which will contain the details of our user who is logged in. We will then display these details on the form that we show on the profile view. So after we have fetched the details, add a event listener for the click event for the edit user form. So if I go to the index.html page here, and here we have a button which when we click this button, the user details will get updated. So any changes made to the form, uh, when this button is clicked, the new details will be sent to the backend and the user details will be updated. Therefore, in order to prevent the form submission and reloading of the page, because we are using an AJAX method to send these details back to the server, we don't want the page to reload. So we don't want the form to submit and the page to reload on the default click event of the button. So we will prevent the default uh, event that takes place when the button is clicked, and we can do that by calling the event.prevent default method. After we have prevented the default event of the button click, which will reload the page, submit the form, we will check if our form is valid, and if the form is not valid, then we will console.log the errors that why this form is not valid. Also, we will show the errors on the form itself. For example, if I do not enter any data for the required field, which is the first name, and I try to submit this form, then I will see an error that is printed, and this is done by jQuery unobtrusive validation, the library that we have added. So uh, here we would first check if the edit user form is valid, and we can do that by calling the .valid method of the jQuery validation library uh, on the form that we want to validate. So the form that we want to validate, the ID of that form is edit user form. So if you look in the HTML or Razor syntax code here, we have created a form element and we have given it an ID of edit user form. So we are targeting this same form by calling its ID. and then calling the dot valid method from jQuery unobtrusive validation and checking if the form is valid. If it is valid, I'm also console.logging it just for testing purposes. We don't need to console.log this, just to make sure that the form is valid. And then we will go ahead and fetch all the details from the input elements or from the drop downs, and then we will pass that to this update profile object that we have created. Now this update profile form object is created over here in the profile method profile.js file. So we will have access to that object because we have referenced the file here in the scripts. So we will update the values because initially we have set the values to empty strings. So we will update these values with the values that we receive when the form is submitted. If the form is not valid, so we can call the find method on the form and validate the error fields, the span tags, and console.log the error. So on the span tags, we will display the errors, and then we will also console.log the errors. Now, if you did not reference the validation script, this errors will the form will not be validated. So we need to add the reference to this validation script. If you haven't watched the previous video tutorials where we have referenced this validation script, installed the libraries using libman, and created this partial view that contains all these scripts references, please go ahead and watch it. So that is it for the form submission when the form is clicked. So the next step here would be to listen to changes on the form. So if the user uh, changes the values in any of the chosen drop down, for example, I change the country, then these changes need to be also addressed and updated on the update profile object. Now, since we are using chosen library, we would have to call the changes method of the chosen library to make sure that we are listening to the changes in the dropdown and then updating them on the update profile object that we have created to store the updated values. So to do that, here just after the edit user form, when it's submitted after this event listener for the click event, we will add the event listener for the changes of the chosen dropdown. So we will target the dropdown ID, which is the ID for the country element, and then for the shipping country. And when the value changes, we will update these values to the update profile object that we have created. Next thing that we need to do is in the drop down for countries, as I showed you the demo, when we select a particular country and a country does not have any states, then we need to make this state drop down to be disabled and then set the value of state to null. So in an event like this where the user selects a country which does not have a state, we need to make sure we handle that particular scenario, and we set the value for the state property, and that can be done by using the event listener for the chosen drop down. And the event listener that we will target is the change event listener. So all we need to do is on the country drop down, we will target the ID of the element and then call the chosen method and then target the change event and then do a callback function which will handle the uh, values that need to be set on the state drop down. So if in case the state value is null, then we will disable it and we will trigger the chosen updated method to update the values of the chosen selected drop down. So that should be it. We have done the same for the shipping country as well, and for the chosen which is the gender drop down as well, we have initialized the chosen drop down. So when the page loads and the DOM element is ready, after that only we can call the chosen method, because if we try to call the chosen method and try to initialize the drop downs in our form. When the DOM is not ready, then we will get an error. So in order for us to use chosen on the chosen drop down elements, we need to make sure that the DOM is ready and all the elements in the DOM are loaded. And we can do that by the jQuery ready event, document.ready event. This is the shorthand for that. And all the logic that we have here for listening for the click events and the changes have been implemented within this document.ready function. So now this should be it for the inline JavaScript code that we would need in this particular index.cs HTML file. And we have already implemented the other extended methods that we need in the profile.js file. So now our index.cs HTML file and the profile.js file is complete. Only thing that is remaining to implement is the cross-site scripting to prevent cross-site scripting in our applications, so that only the backend calls or the calls that we are making to the API endpoint are generated from our application and not from some third-party app. Therefore, to prevent any cross-site scripting, we need to implement XSRF tokens in our application, which I will show you in a separate video tutorial, which will also be a part of this video tutorial series. But at the moment, we don't need to use the XSRF tokens. So for now, we are done with the index.cs HTML file and the profile.js file. Now let's go to the profile controller. In the profile controller, if you notice that we are returning the view without passing any admin base view model to the view. So if you go to the index.cs HTML file, here we are injecting the admin base view model. So when this page loads in your browser, you will receive an error saying that the admin base view model was not found. And the error that you receive is obvious because we are not passing any admin base view model when we are calling the index view, or when we are displaying the index view, the security view, or the activity view. So in order to pass the model, first we need to call this asynchronous method, which is going to create the admin base view model for us and assign the value of the created admin base view model to this static object that we have created. Now, this is the reason why we use the static object. So once if this model is instantiated and created, we don't need to create it another time. So we can use the same object in all other views that we have over here. So all we need to do is return the following uh, admin base view model to the index view, and then it can be then used in the elements that we are using to create the form. Like here we are using the add user class, which is part of the admin base view model. So we will not receive an error when we try to load this index view. Similarly, we will go ahead and also return the admin base view model to the security and activity view as well. And now you will not see any error or information that you will see over here while you had not injected this model. There was a notification shown, uh, and that is a hint that is provided by Visual Studio Code that you are not injecting the model that is required. So here we have added the required model or injected the required model inside the view, and now the model can be accessed inside the view and all the properties inside the model classes. So the next step that we need to perform is, here in the controller we are injecting the iUser service. We have created this iUser service project, and we are using this interface, which is the interface user service, to access the methods inside the user service project. Now we are injecting this iUser service in the controller using dependency injection. So as you know the drill, which is we go and we inject this particular service in the pipeline. So we would need to add the user service to the pipeline of our application so that we can inject it in the controller classes. So let's go ahead and add the user service. So here after the data protection service, I can go ahead and add it. You can add it anywhere. There's no specific order. So the next thing that I want to do is I will go ahead and reference the user service project, so I get rid of the missing import errors, references error. So now that should be it. So we have referenced this user service. Now let's go back to the profile controller. Next thing that you might notice which is missing over here, and that would be the authorize attribute. So if you remember, we have created a filter service in our project which is responsible for validating all the incoming requests. If you go to the home controller, we have added this filter over here to make sure that we validate the request, and it's the request that comes in has a token. So the process is already explained in the past video tutorials. So if you have not watched it, I recommend you to go ahead and watch it. So now here we need to make sure in the profile controller as well we add this filter to prevent any unauthorized access, because only admin user can access these methods. In the admin area, we will add the reference to ASP.NET Core authorization, and the authentication scheme error now is gone. So now the filter has been added. So we have added a layer of protection to the profile controller. The next thing is to go ahead and create the views for security and activity. So to save time, I'm quickly going to add the logic inside these files, and I'm not going to create a separate video tutorial for that, because creating these views is similar to creating the index views, where we have implemented the same structure in these views. So I'll go ahead and add the code and quickly explain what the code does, but we will not have a separate video tutorial for these two views that we are creating. So here the logic is added for the security view, and we have injected the admin base view model from the profile controller. When the view is called, the model is injected to the view, and when the view loads, we load the form and the appropriate values. Inside the script section, we have added a uh, event listener for the click event of the form when the button is submitted. We have two buttons on the form, one which shows on the mobile view and one will be shown on the regular browser view. Now the next thing that we are doing is we have created a change password method. This change password method will be called when the update password button will be clicked. We will make sure that the form is valid, and if the form is valid, then we will go ahead and we will send the object, which is our reset password value model, to the backend API, and when we receive a success response, we will show a sweet alert pop-up. If there is an error, we will show a sweet alert pop-up with the errors in the footer of the pop-up, and we are creating this error list using this extension method that I have created here. We have also used a similar extension method in one of the previous video tutorials when we were logging in using the login form. So now this should be it for the security view. You can go through each line of the code. It's quite similar to the code that we have used in the profile.js and also in the login methods. We are using the AJAX method to make an asynchronous request without the page being loaded and without the page being refreshed. So now we will go ahead and quickly add the activity view as well. Here we are just going to clear this default comments and add the activity view. We are going to inject the admin base view model. Here we have added some custom styling for the elements that we have used in the activity view. We are not using any script tags over here. So the activity view, we are using a for each loop using the razor syntax. We have used this for each loop to loop through each activity and display the values on the activity view. So here you would notice that this for each loop will be executed only if the activity count is more than 0, which means if the user has at least one activity, then we will show it. Otherwise, we will not show any activities. Instead, we will show a message which says no activities. So that should be it for the activity view. We don't need to add anything else over here on this page. If you look at the activity view here, since I have more than one activities, I'm looping through all the activities and displaying them on the activity feed that you see here in this finished project. So this is how you will see your activities displayed on the activity view. You can change the CSS or the UI depending on your requirement. So we have implemented all these
three views. We have implemented the logic to display the content on all these three views. Now, the next thing that we would need to do is in the JavaScript files or JavaScript methods that we have used, we are calling the API endpoints. So in the next video tutorial, we will go ahead and start creating the API endpoints in our application, and so that we can consume these APIs in different classes in our project and also in the Razor views and JavaScript files. So that should be it for this video tutorial. All the code will be provided in the DevOps repo. You can download it. The link will be in the video description. And if you have any questions, use the comment section. Please do like and subscribe our channel Tech Howdy.